Do you struggle emotionally even though you had a healthy childhood? As a highly sensitive person, this used to confuse me a lot. Like my parents didn't beat me up daily and even loved me. Then why do I feel emotionally numb and dead inside? After 5 years of healing and research, I realized that this stemmed not from horrible things happening to me, but rather good things that were supposed to happen, not happening. In this video, I want to share the 6 differences between childhood neglect and trauma. And understanding this was the key to my healing journey. If you want to understand how much neglect you actually experience as a child, I've created this free tool that helps you with that. You just answer some questions and it gives you a score out of 100. I took it myself and was surprised by the results. Do check it out. Let's start with the first and the major difference between the two. Let me share a personal story that beautifully illustrates the difference between the two. So a while back ago, I visited my nephew. He's around 4 years old and we were playing around having fun. We spent a good afternoon together. We enjoyed a lot and in the evening, it was time for me to leave. At first, he was adamant on going with me, but later he was convinced to let me go. And as I was leaving, he got upset, teary-eyed, and we could see that he was about to cry. So his father, in the most loving tone, told him, "Beta, don't cry, let Fasi go." It was not like my nephew was being hit or abused by his father for crying. Rather, his emotions were lovingly being invalidated, which presumably gave him the subconscious message that his emotion of sorrow is not appreciated. So the injury in the case of what I'm calling regular trauma is a result of presence of stress through incidents like accidents, sexual assault, or any form of abuse. And in the case of CEN, which is what I'll be calling childhood emotional neglect from now on, the injury is because of absence of good things. Child development research shows how for a child's emotional part of the brain to fully develop, the expression of all emotions, especially the negative ones, has to be encouraged by the parents. And when that does not happen, it causes neglect trauma. So trauma really is a wound because of presence and neglect is a wound because of absence. But in reality, things aren't as black and white as I'm making it to be here. There is often overlap between CEN and regular trauma. Most people who experience one also experience the other, and the impact of both are compounded by one another. More on this later, which brings me to the second difference. There's a major problem with CEN which makes it the most dangerous form of trauma. Here's what it is. Regular trauma, like we saw, is scary things happening to you. So if as a child you experienced a terrifying car accident, you will probably remember it for the rest of your life because it was the presence of something bad. CEN is like vitamin deficiency. You don't remember missing the essential vitamins in your meal as a child. You just experience the weakness in your body. Similarly with CEN, you can only struggle with its effect in your emotional reaction and relationship troubles. You can't remember it happening because, like the vitamins, it was the absence of essential things that should have happened to you as a child. This is why CEN is so difficult to research across masses and why I call it invisible trauma, because it's so common and easily forgotten. Most people don't even know they have it, which just frustrates me a lot. People who go through it, which is almost everyone, to be honest, just suffer from its terrible symptoms in their self and relationships with others. We'll get into the symptoms in a bit, but before that, it's important for you to understand the core beliefs caused by both of these. The beliefs caused by both neglect and trauma are pretty extreme, but make perfect sense. Here's why I say that. The primary belief when you experience a lot of terrible things over and over again is that the world is not a safe place to live in and you must be very wary of other people. This can further stem into two directions. Because everyone is out to get you, you can either A, compare with them, defeat them and be better than them so that they cannot harm you, or B, become minuscule and invisible so that no one sees you and harms you. In the case of CEN, when your emotions are rejected and ignored repeatedly, because your emotions are so core to who you are, the only way a child's brain can interpret that is, I am at my core worthless. Why else would mom and dad ignore my true self? So the core belief in the case of trauma is the world is scary and neglect is I am worthless. But it is also important to understand that these core beliefs are a defense mechanism. Picture a man who is in a war environment and for whatever reason thinks that the world is safe and beautiful. He goes out, la 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 la, and he's killed. So the belief that the world is a scary place is literally essential for his survival in that situation. Similarly, a child whose emotions are an inconvenience to his parents, he would not be loved by them, and as a result, he would die. At least that's what his brain thinks. So believing that he is worthless helps him put effort into changing his behavior and emotions so that he can be loved and survive. The problem comes in when these beliefs remain even when the guy from the war zone is shifted to a safe environment and the child is not dependent on his parents' love to survive. Here's how both of these show up in your daily life. There's a key difference between the symptoms of trauma and neglect, which most people don't understand because it's actually pretty subtle. Because the core belief in trauma is that the world is a dangerous place, the key emotion is of fear. And the symptoms revolve around it, which includes panic attack, chronic stress, overwhelm, anxiety, flashbacks, and even the startle response, where people get startled by loud noises and sudden movements. In relationships, trauma shows up as hypervigilance and a lack of trust in other people because everyone's out to get you. In response to the core belief of I am worthless, the key emotion of someone who experiences CEN is shame, toxic shame. And all the symptoms revolve around hiding, which includes hiding from people through isolation, emotions through numbness. Some other symptoms are chronic depression, fatigue, perfectionism, and purposelessness in life. In relationship, it shows up as an inability to be vulnerable, even if you genuinely want to be close to that person. Here's what both of these symptoms look like in your nervous system. There's a complete polar opposite response in the nervous system in case of trauma versus neglect. So think of your nervous system, which includes your brain and autonomic nervous system, like a car. The accelerator is charging up through fight and flight, and the brake is like slowing down through rest and digest. There's a third mode which is used in the case of emergency, that is the handbrake, which immediately stops everything in the case of immense danger. When it comes to trauma, because your system repeatedly got the message that the world is dangerous and threat is everywhere, it adapted accordingly. In the brain, your amygdala becomes overactive, that is the alarm system, which scans for threat. It is now always on guard, paranoid, and scared of danger even when it doesn't need to be. The autonomic nervous system gets stuck in the sympathetic response of fight and flight. And in the case of intense stress, it goes into the freeze response more often. With CEN, your system repeatedly got the message that no one is coming for your needs, and that response shows up in your brain and again, autonomic nervous system. There's a poor development in the part of your brain called prefrontal cortex. Among other functions, it acts like a mature parent that helps you regulate your emotions and see things objectively. There is also reduction in the part of your brain associated with interoception, that is your ability to feel inside your body. Things like sensations of emotions, hunger, pain, etc. Basically, it has to do with body awareness. the autonomic nervous system gets stuck in chronic freeze response. Essentially, in the case of trauma, the accelerator and handbrake becomes more sensitive and are used more often than they are needed. In the case of neglect, the accelerator didn't develop fully and the handbrake was pulled and got jammed in that position. Finally, here's how the healing process of both of these look different. Because of the impact of both of these are so different, so is the path to healing them. And knowing how to do that is the key to let go of your past. Imagine your psyche as this house. In case of trauma, it's like your house got beat up and damaged because of a hurricane. Whereas in case of neglect, it's like the foundation of the house was never built properly. Which, by the way, also makes it more vulnerable to hurricanes, but that's a different topic for a different video. The way to heal in case of trauma is to fix the damage done to the home of your psyche through processing the past hurtful events in a safe environment like therapy. Whereas in case of neglect, you have to build the foundation that was never built. The first step to that is getting to know where you are lacking in the foundation through introspection, journaling, and tracking what triggers you helps a lot. The tool I created also helps you a lot to get more clarity on this. And the second step is building the foundation through skills like emotional intelligence, self-compassion, body awareness, calmness, and meaningful relationships. If you want a concrete system with exact tools to heal this invisible trauma, watch this video next where I've condensed everything I learned from half a decade of working on it.